أدور واعتنيتك وسط روحي لقيتك تطرز ذكرياتي معروف حبك للأبد للتالي رغم اللي عادوني ورغم عذاني معروف حبك للأبد للتالي رغم اللي عادوني ورغم عذاني.
Agreed upon by both Sunnis and Shias.
Yes.
After the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Hassan forfeited his right to the Khilafah and handed it over to Muawiyah, let alone not fight him. Many people, they understood, they still misunderstand, they misunderstood, and till today, they misunderstand the position of Imam al-Hassan. Why would he forfeit his right to the Khilafah, and why would he give it to a person like Muawiyah? Wasn't there anyone else from the Sahaba, from the Tabi'een, from the second generation of Muslims, from the people in Medina, from Bani Hashim, for example? Yes. Why to Muawiyah? In fact, this was so ambiguous and so misunderstood. The Imam was completely misunderstood to the point that some of his companions would insult him. One of the companions would come and say, Assalamu alayki ya mudhill al-mu'mineen. Peace be upon you, O the one that humiliated all believers. Some great companions, including Hujr ibn Hadi, historians narrate, and I hope this is not true. I hope this is not true. Some historians narrate that Hujr ibn Hadi came and insulted the Imam to his face. And he told him, Assalamu alayki ya mudhill al-mu'mineen. Peace be upon you, O the one that brought humiliation to believers. لَوَدَدْتُ أَنَّكَ مِتْ وَمِتْتُ قَبْلَكَ. I wish that you had died and hadn't done this peace treaty, and I had died with you or before you. This shows that not even his own, the closest companions. Hujr was a loyal companion to Rasulullah, to Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hassan.
And he died with the love of Imam Ali alayhi salam.
And he died with the love, he refused to curse Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam.
Yes.
Even though Amir al-Mu'mineen had given them permission to curse him, he had said, وَأَمَّا السَّبْ فَسُبُّونِي وَلَا تَتَبَرَّؤُوا مِنِّي. If you are asked to curse me, then curse me, but don't seek innocence from me. Don't claim innocence from me. Yet he refused. That shows that he had true faith, but he lacked knowledge of the Imam's position and why he performed the peace treaty with Muawiyah. The thing is, Muawiyah and Yazid, even though they're father and son, but they're completely different. It's very important to realize
the apple fell far from the tree in this case.
The apple fell far from the tree to some degree. They're both rotten apples. Yeah. They're both very rotten apples. However, Muawiyah was extremely diplomatic. He was very witty. He was very diplomatic. He knew how to keep the appearance of Islam. He was very smart in this. Not to appear as a hypocrite or as a kafir. No. He made everyone think that he ruled in the name of Islam. And by the way, his sister is married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah. So some gave him the title of Khal al-Mu'mineen, the uncle of believers. I don't know who were his nephews. Definitely me and you are not one of his nephews. Khal al-Mu'mineen. He portrayed himself to be a representative of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even though most people knew that he's a dajjal, he's a hypocrite, but he didn't give them an excuse. Apparently, he was a Muslim. He would lead the prayers. He would come to Mecca. He would come to Medina. All the appearances, he cared about the appearance. That's why Yazid was completely different. Yazid would get drunk in public.
He was openly sinning.
He was an open sinner, fasiq. Fasiq, the translation of a fasiq is a person who sins openly. Muawiyah would not sin openly. He would do it in secret. We all know that he would drink, but he would drink in private. He would commit all sorts of sins, but in private. In public, he appeared as a saint. To everyone, he appeared as a saint. Yazid was promiscuous. He would gamble. He would drink. Completely the opposite of his father. A real idiot. Even his father, Muawiyah, was disappointed in him. Yeah. I think Muawiyah was trying to convey a message to Yazid that you could do whatever you want, just do it in private. You don't have to do it in public. Don't embarrass us.
Even that was too much.
Even that was too much for Yazid. This is one. Two, Imam al-Hassan did not have an army. He would have definitely lost. If Imam al-Hassan were to fight Muawiyah the same way that Amir al-Mu'mineen fought Muawiyah, definitely Imam al-Hassan would have lost. Why? Because Muawiyah had bought off his major generals. Historians mention that such and such general, he sent him 40,000 dirhams. Another one, 60,000 dirhams.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't just buy off the general, but the general and his troops as well. Each general had maybe 1,000 troops under him taking orders from him. They were all bought off. Now Imam al-Hassan was not naive. He saw that all his top generals were going to the other camp. In which army did he want to fight Muawiyah? It would have definitely ended up in the loss of Imam al-Hassan and in his death as well, publicly, his public death. That would have been a major blow to Imam al-Hassan. And Imam al-Hassan was the Khalifa at the time. Khalifa for all Muslims. That means there was a possibility that the Khalifa of the time would have been assassinated. This was a major blow. This would have been a major blow for the Khilafah and for the Imam.
And you know, what can we really expect from the very people that attacked Imam Ali alayhi salam during his 5 years, that they didn't let him sit down for 1 second and constantly, attacking? Why would Imam Hassan want to inherit the same enemies?
Ahsant. To the point that his own followers and the people of Kufa, they tried to assassinate Imam al-Hassan several times. To the point that Imam al-Hassan, when he would go out for Salat al-Jama'ah, he would wear a shield under his clothing, because he knew that his life was in threat. It was in danger. It was under threat. And in fact, he was shot once in the middle of his salah. He was shot with an arrow in his feet, in his leg. Another time, he was stabbed with a dagger in his thigh during salah. This is not the army of Muawiyah. This is his own people backstabbing him. Thus, Imam Hassan realized that he doesn't have the men. He doesn't have the capability to fight Muawiyah. He doesn't have the troops. On the other hand, Muawiyah is sending him, like we mentioned yesterday, Muawiyah sent him a blank piece of paper with a signature on the bottom, meaning that you tell me what your conditions are. Tell me whatever condition you'd like, and I accept the condition, as long as I become the Khalifa. That meant Imam al-Hassan could have put any condition. So if history were to read this later on and to see that this man is telling him, put any condition as long as I become the Khalifa. You don't have an army. What excuse did Imam Hassan have to fight Muawiyah? Muawiyah is telling him, I'll do whatever you'd like. You want me to preserve Islam, I'll preserve Islam. Whatever you'd like me to do, I'll do. Imam al-Hassan did not have an excuse to fight Muawiyah, historically, because he knew historians will come and will say the Imam didn't have an excuse, even though realistically he did have an excuse.
And to this date, there's a lot of dispute on who was right in the Battle of Siffin. Some people like to even take Muawiyah's side in this case.
Ahsant. Or some people say, let's not even take sides.
Yeah, they made mistakes.
Our master Muawiyah fought our master Imam al-Hassan or Ali ibn Abi Talib, our master Ali ibn Abi Talib.
And it's funny, they don't mind not taking a side in this.
No.
How could you not have a side?
This is part of their school of thought. It's in their school of thought that don't ask about politicians. Don't ask about politics, especially when it comes to the Sahaba. Why did Uthman destroy Abu Dhar? Why did he take him out of Medina and send him to Arabia? Don't ask. Uthman knows best, and Abu Dhar knows best.
Or even if he didn't know best, his intention was good.
His intention was good. Both of their intentions were good. That doesn't make sense. Once, I was in Damascus. I had gone to visit Sayyidah Zainab Salamullah alayha. I ask Allah to take us back again and rid that country from the evil of the terrorists. I was sitting in a taxi. The driver told me, would you like to visit Habil? For a moment, I was distracted. I told him, which Habil? He said, Sayyiduna Habil, our master Habil, that was killed by Sayyiduna Qabil. I told him, well, wait a second. Your master Habil that was killed by your master Qabil, how does that go together? Isn't this a contradiction?
And I'm imagining someone outside of Islam just listening to that and being so desensitized by a religion. How could your respected master kill your other respected master? There's no
Where's
right
your
or wrong.
logic? Where's your reason? Thus, Imam al-Hassan had absolutely, he didn't have an excuse. With all these conditions, and Imam al-Hassan laid his conditions. Number one, after the death of Muawiyah, the Khilafah
Comes back to Imam.
will come back to Bani Hashim. This is one. Number two, no more assassinations, no more killing.
And likewise, he took care of Hujr bin Adi.
Muawiyah had assassinated many of the companions of Imam al-Hassan. In fact, he was known to have said, Lillahi junudan min asan. Allah has soldiers made out of honey, meaning he would put the poison in the honey and send it to people. And he would assassinate. This was one of the tactics of Muawiyah. Kill and assassinate by honey, putting the poison in honey. Two, the assassinations would stop. Three, the money that is in Medina will remain in Medina. The money that's under Imam al-Hassan will remain under Imam al-Hassan. Bayt al-Mal. Over six, there was about six.
Stop cursing Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Stopping the cursing of Imam Ali, which didn't stop.
We have narrations that said he actually, he paid people to do it on their Friday prayers.
They continued for over 70 years. Historians say the cursing of Imam Ali alayhi salam.
And I think another one was to uphold the sunnah of Rasulullah.
Most likely, to uphold religion, the appearance of religion. Thus, Imam al-Hassan had his conditions, and they were relatively met to some degree, other than the cursing of Imam Ali. The assassinations stopped, the money was kept in Medina, there was relative peace and ceasefire, there wasn't public disobedience of religion. People obeyed religion. There was salah, there was fasting, there was hajj. These appearances were still there. But then all of a sudden, this was after the death of Imam al-Hassan, Muawiyah says that I changed my mind. We had decided to give back the Khilafah that we took, give it back to Bani Hashim. But this agreement, I put it under my feet. He stepped on the agreement and he said, I appoint my son, Yazid. And they say that a man stood up when Muawiyah gave this speech. A man stood up and he said, Amir al-Mu'mineen hadha. This is Amir al-Mu'mineen. وَإِن مَاتَ فَهَذَا. And if he dies, then it's him. He appointed Yazid. And he who says no, فَهَذَا. And he who says no, then he takes his sword out. Muawiyah tells him, sit down, you're a very eloquent speaker. This was their mentality. This was their mindset. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam came, first of all, the Imam was not in power. The Imam was in opposition. And this is very important because the opposition could win. The opposition can make a position, can take a stand.
Especially because it was in the agreement. He had
that the Khilafah will come back to Bani Hashim, and Muawiyah had broken.
It was his right.
It was his right to the Khilafah. This is one. Number two, Yazid was Yazid. Everyone knew Yazid. Even the Sahaba in Medina, when they heard about Yazid, they were shocked. It's like right now, if we were to hear, for example, in the United States of America or in Europe, or if you hear about, for example, Dennis Rodman. I'm sure you've heard of Dennis Rodman, the famous basketball player in the U.S. All of a sudden, he runs for presidency and he wants to become the U.S. president. Of course, this is just an example. Otherwise, the U.S. presidency is far from the Khilaf. My point is, everyone knows does not deserve this position. All of a sudden, he comes to the Khilafah. He represents Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa and he wants allegiance from the top Sahaba, including Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This requires a lot of audacity, a lot of boldness. A person who deserves the Khilafah, come and tell him, give me allegiance? This is ridiculous. Imam Hussein saw that here, Islam has reached a very critical point. A person for Yazid, who's a known fasiq, a person who commits sins in public, to come and receive the Khilafah, this cannot be done. Because this will only lead to the worst. This will lead to the worst.
The deen would be destroyed, basically.
The deen will be destroyed. Muawiyah kept the appearances. Muawiyah was still diplomatic. He wouldn't sin in public. Yazid would sin in public. Yazid had no respect for religion. Yazid didn't keep any sort of dignity for religion. Imam Hussein had to draw the line and make his stand.
Hassan, thank you very much, Sayyid. That was a very in-depth analysis on Imam Hassan's time of Imam compared to Imam Hussein's time, and I think that was really important for us to touch upon for our viewers. You know, a lot of times we also bring up the fact that, you know, Imam Hussein did have an uprising. He did blatantly say, no, I do not want to give allegiance to Yazid. What was his goal in doing that, other than, you know, just asking for his right back?
You see, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam started a movement. Only to understand this movement, the revolution of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was a lot bigger than Yazid. Yazid was a nobody. Yes, Yazid was someone who was not deserving of the Khilafah, who had come to power. But it's a lot bigger than that. That's why some people, there's a verse of poetry in Arabic, I'll only translate it. They say that if you'd like to know who killed Imam Hussein, the answer is very clear. The arrow that pierced the chest of Imam Hussein wasn't shot in Karbala. It was shot at Saqifa. That arrow came 51 years ago from Saqifa, and it landed in the chest of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You see, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, it wasn't just about Yazid. Even though Yazid was a tyrant, they needed to go. Yazid needed to be exposed. Of course, Imam Hussein wasn't able to take Yazid out of power, but he exposed him. But it wasn't just about Yazid. It was about the ones before Yazid. It was about his father and the one before his father. Of course, not Imam Ali, but the ones before, all the way to the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The plan that was drawn by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet, it was hijacked. The plan was taken away.
So the revolution of Imam Hussein wasn't only the fact that Yazid was now the Khalifa, it was to put Islam back on track from what it was lost upon the death of the Prophet during Saqifa.
Ahsant. That's why the revolution of Imam Hussein was a reformist revolution and an act of correction. When we compare Imam Hussein to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see Rasulullah as a founder. Rasulullah wanted to found Islam, to establish Islam. In establishing Islam, everyone's existence, everyone's participation was necessary.
Yes.
Even the hypocrites. We see that Rasulullah didn't kick the hypocrites out of Islam. He didn't kick them out of the Arabian Peninsula. He didn't even fight them. Why? Because Islam was still a newborn religion. It was very delicate. It could easily be harmed. Thus, whoever came to Islam and accepted Islam, Rasulullah would accept his Islam. Of course, Rasulullah would know who's a genuine believer and who's a hypocrite.
And we can see how he would behave with some of these people.
Some he would, of course, he would treat them differently, but he didn't say no to anyone. He was welcoming of everyone, including Abu Sufyan, including of well-known hypocrites. However, after the death of Rasulullah, the period of establishment, it continued until the rise of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Until the rise of Amir al-Mu'mineen to power, all this time was the period of establishment. But when Amir al-Mu'mineen came to power, no. He had to draw down, he had to draw the line. He had to lay down the law. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't fight outsiders. He fought insiders, and he had civil wars. Rasulullah had told him, Ya Ali, سأقاتل على التأويل كما قاتلت على التنزيل. Ya Ali, I am fighting over the revelation. You will fight over the explanation of the revelation. My wars are all about the revelation. They denied the revelation, I'm trying to establish the revelation. But your wars will be over the explanation of the revelation. They will try to twist the meaning of the revelation to their benefit, while you will try to bring the revelation to its original meaning, to its original interpretation. Same thing goes for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. His movement was a movement of correction. The time of foundation was over. After the death of Rasulullah, up till the rise of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Islam was firmly established.
Polytheism was no longer existent.
Polytheism
There
was
was
no
some
longer
law, between the Arabs of the time,
Ahsantum. Polytheism was no longer a problem. There was no threat from the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. When Rasulullah died, some ask, why didn't Amir al-Mu'mineen raise his sword and fight? Why didn't he fight?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that question.
The problem is that Islam was still a newborn religion. Islam was still in a very critical stage. Imagine a fight inside, and the news reaches the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. They could have easily been attacked.
From both sides.
From both sides, and there's disunity from within. But when Amir al-Mu'mineen had reached power, Islam had expanded. The Roman Empire was no longer a threat. The Persian Empire was no longer a threat. They didn't have threats from the outside. The Islamic Empire had become very strong. The threat was from the inside. Imam Hussein had to draw the line and choose the men that stood for Islam and make sure that the men that pose a threat to Islam be exposed.
Hassan.
This is very important. From then on, that the men, those schools of thought and men that pose a threat to Islam, they need to be exposed. And this is what exactly Imam Hussein alayhi salam did, even if it cost him his life. But this was the ultimate goal, that these men, they are wrongly representing Islam. There's a difference between Islam and these men. Even though they're ruling in the name of Islam, but they're far from Islam. In fact, they're here to destroy Islam. That's the whole point of Bani Umayyah accepting Islam and coming to power. The whole point is to come from within and destroy it.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because Yazid was also a poet. He wasn't incredibly foolish. He had some lyrical senses. In his poetry, if we read, we find that he blatantly says, "My goal is to ruin this religion. The Prophet is dead. I'm in charge now." There is no dispute besides the character of Yazid was just there. And I find it very sad that to this day there are people that actually say, may God be pleased with a character like Yazid. In addition, you mentioned a very brilliant hadith from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I think 2 nights ago. You mentioned that, I don't know, you can pick up on it and continue. You said that Imam Hussein would rather die than to live in the presence of such tyrants and transgressors. Maybe you can say the whole hadith again.
Sure. Imam Hussein alayhi salam has sayings that are immortal.
Yes.
Are extremely immortal. In one of his sayings, الموت أولى من ركوب العاري, or إني لا أرى في الموت إلا سعادة والحياة مع الظالمين إلا برمة. That for me, death is nothing but happiness, but living with oppressors is not a death. Is not life.
It's not life.
It's a death. Imam Hussein alayhi salam gave a new meaning to life and death. A new meaning to life and death. He gave a message that if death means to uphold your honor and respect, dying for a cause, this is not death. This is actually a cause. This is actually a life, because you're dying for a cause. Is Imam Hussein really dead? Physically he's dead, but Imam Hussein is alive. So many people lived, but they didn't really live.
The fact that we have a channel named after him is...
A channel, thousands, millions of people, they come to his grave. Millions of people are inspired by his name. How many revolutions? History tells us that several revolutions took place throughout history that were inspired by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Even during Bani Umayyah, during the time of Bani Umayyah, several revolutions were led against Bani Umayyah, influenced by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein taught them that what's the worst that could happen to you? The worst is death. And death is not a bad thing. When your name gets to live, when your name is immortalized, and we believe that we have a paradise. If we didn't believe in a paradise, obviously death is a loss. But when there's paradise following awaiting martyrs, then this is not really death. This is life. Imam Hussein taught us these messages, and his voice and his principles and his words lived on, and it remained in the ears of those that heard him.
Excellent. You did briefly mention that Imam Hussein's death did lead to a lot of other revolutions. A lot of times what we find out is, was Imam Hussein successful despite the fact that he he got massacred, his family died. You know, some people say, why did he take the women and children with him? Why did he bring them and, you know, cause them so much pain and suffering? You know, they were dragged to Sham over a long period of time in shackles. You know, what's your response to that? Why would Imam Hussein bring those women and children with him to the battlefield? And did they play a role in his success?
Let me answer your first question regarding the success of the revolution of Imam Hussein, and then I'll get to the second question. As for the success, I would think that a person on the day of Ashura, standing in the middle of the battlefield, looking at the camp of Imam Hussein on this side, looking at the dead bodies, and then looking on this side, the army of Umar ibn Sa'd, he would say, this camp lost and this camp won. But if this person were to fast forward, sit in a jet or whatever, and come 2,000 years or 1,400 or whatever, 1,400 years, fast forward to 1,400 years, and then come and look at the picture again. Come in the same exact position, in the same land, and look at these domes, and read history, and ask about Yazid, and ask about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. What happened to Imam Hussein and what happened to Yazid? There's no doubt about it that the revolution of Imam Hussein succeeded. Today, ask anyone, not even his followers, the followers of Imam Hussein, but ask the followers of the other school of thought, the school of thought of the Sahaba. What do you think of Yazid? Who would have a good opinion or a positive opinion? No one would have a positive opinion of Yazid.
No one with a sound mind, that is.
No one with a sound mind or a sound heart. There are some with a sound mind, but they're hypocrites. But because they have so much, their hearts are filled with so much hatred for Ahlulbayt, they'll praise Yazid.
Yes.
But someone with a sound mind and a sound heart will tell you that Yazid was an oppressor. Yazid killed the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was enough that Imam Hussein took away the halo on top of the heads of Bani Umayyah, so to speak. Bani Umayyah were seen as the caliphs, the khulafa, people ruling in the name of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are the imams. They deserve recognition. They deserve obedience. What Imam Hussein alayhi salam did was that he took that away. He made them ordinary human beings in the eyes of people. In the eyes of people, Bani Umayyah became kings and emperors. They were no longer khulafa. This was a king, an emperor, who drinks like a king, who acts promiscuously like a king, who steals money, people's money, and spends lavishly like a regular king and emperor. He took that away. Imam Hussein was able to tell them that they do not represent religion. Don't take your knowledge from them. We're the Ahlulbayt. If you'd like genuine knowledge, don't go to them. Knowledge has a gate, has a school, has a house. The Ahlulbayt are the house for knowledge, and it's not Bani Umayyah. This was an enough accomplishment for people to realize that this regime did not deserve to be in power. And if they were in power, they were in power by force. Definitely a wake-up call.
Hassan.
As for the second question, regarding why did he take his woman with him? Again, if we're looking just at the day of Ashura, it doesn't make sense. Why do you bring your woman with you to the battlefield? Some say they brought him, some say Imam Hussein brought the woman for them to nurse the wounded. But Imam Hussein knew that there was no one going to remain wounded. They will all die. Some say that he brought them for them to cook for the army. What was the food? The army of Imam Hussein didn't have. They didn't even have food, even if it was in the desert. Some say he brought them for jihad. Obviously, jihad is not wajib upon women. There's only one reason that makes sense, and it's a valid reason because we saw it, and it was to deliver the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Yazid could have easily crushed the army of Imam Hussein in the middle of the desert without anyone finding out. No one would have found out. Those who fought could have went back home, taken their dinars, and lived their lives without anyone finding out.
Or the kid could have skewed the stories, because there was a reputation of skewing stories back then.
And they did actually. He tried. Yazid had announced that the people that we killed in Karbala were Khawarij. They were Kharijites, meaning they were a group of outlaws that wanted to fight for power, and we crushed them.
And they were celebrating.
And they were celebrating. The people of Kufa were celebrating. The people of Damascus were celebrating. They were outlaws that were crushed. Just like, for example, today in Iraq, we have in Fallujah, we have Daesh, and the government army is trying to destroy. They were outlaws. This is the image that Yazid was giving. Yet, Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, with her eloquence, with her beautiful words, with her powerful words in Kufa and Damascus, made everyone realize that number one, they were the family of Rasulullah. They were the household of Rasulullah. The immediate grandchildren of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah didn't have any other grandchildren other than Imam Hussein alayhi salam. At that day, Imam Hussein was the only immediate grandson to Rasulullah. This is one. And number two, they were crushed. They were massacred unjustly in an oppressive manner. This had an effect. This had an effect. In fact, Yazid was fearing an uprisal within Damascus from his own following. He was afraid, or even in Medina, that his own people would rise against him. That is why Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, when she went back to Medina, she was holding majalis in her house nightly majalis.
Which highlights the importance of majalis.
Which highlights, and in one of my lectures, I talked about the history of majalis and who was the first to hold majalis. The first to hold majalis was Sayyidah Zainab. And possibly the very first majlis to be held for Imam Hussein was inside the castle of Yazid. Inside the castle of Yazid, when Imam Zayn al-Abidin gave his famous speech and then Sayyidah Zainab spoke. Thus, Sayyidah Zainab delivered the message of Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein owes her that she delivered his message. If it wasn't for her, his message would have been crushed. No one would have heard about it. Thus, Sayyidah Zainab served as a media vehicle for Imam Hussein, for his message to reach the entire world.
Now, Sayyidina, that was a beautiful answer, by the way. Thank you very much. We have about 2 to 3 minutes left on the show. Would you say that perhaps bringing the children along as well basically showed the innocence of the attack they did against Imam Hussein, to the extent that, people are watching and they're seeing children in shackles, like Imam Muhammad al-Baqir was about 3 years old at that time, right? So perhaps the innocence of the group was something that when Yazid is saying these people are outlaws, people are looking and saying there's women and children.
Outlaws?
Yeah.
This is a very good point. There's another point that when Imam Hussein took his women and children, he was trying to make a point that I'm not coming to fight. But I'm not coming to fight. Who wants to fight by taking his women and children? If you're going to start killing me and fighting me, that's another issue. I'll defend myself. But I will not start fighting. And indeed, Imam Hussein did not start fighting. Even in Karbala, even in Ashura, on the day of Ashura, Imam Hussein did not raise a sword until the arrows started raining on him from the other side. Then he was forced to defend himself. Taking his women and children, it was giving a message that my movement is a peaceful movement. Let's fix this peacefully. I don't want to fight you. Let's sit down and discuss this and come to an agreement that Yazid does not deserve to lead. Give back the Khilafah to the people who deserve it. Not just today, not just yesterday, but for the past 51 years. From the day that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died until today, the Khilafah was taken away from those who deserve it. Thus, taking the women and children was a message that I don't want to fight unless you're going to force me to fight. Otherwise, my women and children, they're all with me. I'm not a man that's ready to fight.
Thank you very much, Sayyidina, for your time. This concludes our program for tonight. And inshallah, we look forward to having you for the next few nights once again, until the 15th of Sha'ban, in honor of Imam Mahdi's birthday. Shukran. With that being said, dear viewers, that concludes our discussion on Imam Hussein for tonight. But we will be taking a short break in a few moments, and we will be joined by Sayyid Haider al Jezani, where we will be listening to some of his beautiful recitations for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. With that being said, I would like to bid you all Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Join us in the next 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Respected viewers of Imam Hussein TV, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to our live show right here from Karbala. As you can see, the dome of Abbas is right behind me, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam is also right there. And we are here, blessed to be in the studio on the Waladat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the night of the Waladat of Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. Joining us tonight once again, Sayyid Haider al Jezani. Assalamu alaikum, dear Sayyid. How are you? It's good to have you once again on our show.
Good to be here.
Sayyid, what have you prepared for us tonight?
Today I have a poem by Nouri Sardar, which is about Ziyarat al-Karbala. Starts off with Ziyarat al-Hussein and goes into Abul Fadl Abbas, as today we have two occasions clash into one.
Yes.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The language of your love rewards. Ya Hussein.
Hassan.
The language of love, your love rewards. My love into longing for you rewards. When I serve you, I know it's rewards. A visit to your grave, O Aba Abdullah. When your comfort and presence I adore, my visit to you always I adore. I picture a courtyard and adore the door to the grave of my master. I recall my spirits rise and ascends, the lover's heart's comforts and ascends. I recall a feeling and a sense that I feel next to you, O Abbas. I recall a beautiful shrine, its content. I feel at home with its wonderful content. I feel comforted, understood, and content. Beneath a grand dome, beneath a grand dome, beneath a grand dome, upon which flies your banner.
Sant, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. That was a beautiful recitation. Thank you very much, Sayyid Haider. You know, you never cease to amaze me with your recitations. You know, would you like to tell the viewers any last words before we end the program?
Alhamdulillah, that Allah has gave us all the blessings to serve Abu Abdullah Hussein. Each person different, each person more beautiful than the other. I'm a small servant to everyone who serves Abu Abdullah Hussein.
Yes.
So Alhamdulillah, shukr, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this opportunity to serve Abu Abdullah Hussein, and we're serving Abu Abdullah Hussein in his own land, and inshallah may Allah grant everyone who hasn't been to Karbala, who has already been to Karbala and not here today, inshallah they come very soon, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. You know, we have a couple of minutes on the show, and I just wanted to briefly talk about the importance of poetry once again. You know, Sayed Hossein Qazwini just earlier was mentioning that the first majalis for Imam Hussein alayhi salam was by Lady Zainab salamullahu alayha.
That's true.
And you know, being a reciter yourself, you know, could you tell us any of the life-changing, if it has changed your life, of being a reciter for Imam Hussein alayhi salam?
Well, firstly, poetry is beautiful. It's like me writing a letter to you, trying to make you understand something. Except by poetry, it has a different way of approach to you. You know, people like the sound of poetry, even if it's recited or read on the spot as a cappella or something like that. I mean, poetry is beautiful. Of course, yeah, Lady Fatima al-Zahra, she's the one who started the majalis of Abu Abdullah Hussein. We learn from her from everything. And you know, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, Ajallah wali al-Faraj, inshaAllah, he says, لَأَبْكِي عَلَى الْحُسَيْنِ بَدَلَ الدَّمُوعِ دَمَا. So I'll cry for Abu Abdullah Hussein. So what's the most effective way for a person to draw a tear to his eye is hearing poetry.
And the merits of those tears themselves are phenomenal, you know.
Exactly. There's even tears of joy. Like when I go and visit the shrines inside the Darih, you have people who recite poetry, and from joy they're teary from joy. So you know, it's different emotions. There's different ways to catch you. But I think poetry and recitations, and these are the best ways to play around with someone's emotions and get them to feel as if they are in Karbala, no matter where they are.
Ahsant.
So alhamdulillah wa shukr.
Alhamdulillah, thank you very much for joining us once again, Sayyid.
It's a pleasure.
Inshallah, I look forward to seeing you once again tomorrow night, where we'll continue to recite for Imam Hussein. With that being said, dear viewers of Imam Hussein TV, we would like to conclude tonight's program. Once again, we would like to congratulate our beloved 12th Imam, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, and our dear viewers out there, for it is the waladat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and tonight is also the mark of the waladat of Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. With that being said, we would like to conclude tonight's program by asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our beloved 12th Imam, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajallahu ta'ala faraja. Allahumma ajil li waliyik al-faraj, wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tahirin, wa salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
غيرك بهذا الكون ما يحلالي، انت الحبيب العايش بدلالي، غيرك بهذا الكون ما يحلالي، غالي 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 يا ابو السجاد حبك غالي، غالي يا ابو السجاد حبك غالي.